We begin tonight with our Commitment 2024 coverage and all eyes on South Florida. About an hour ago, 5 Republican presidential candidates faced off in Miami. Missing again, frontrunner Donald Trump, who instead hosted a rally not far from the debate. Good evening. I'm Felicia Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us. All 5 candidates hit on a number of topics, including the Israel-Hamas war and the cost of living. We have live team coverage from Miami right now. We begin with my co-anchor, Todd McDermott, who's overlooking the Adrienne Arsht Center for the Performing Arts with the highlights from tonight's debate. Todd?
Well, Felicia, again, as you mentioned, 5 candidates tonight. Make no mistake, they did take swipes at President Joe Biden on the border, on the economy, and on the amount of support he's showing Israel in its war against Hamas. But the candidate who is 10 miles away, campaigning in Hialeah, also was not spared tonight. Yes, Donald Trump was mentioned on the debate stage tonight. As you said, 5 candidates, the higher threshold set by the Republican National Committee, paring it down to 5 from a much larger group of 7 and 8 in the last 2 debates. A month from now, debate number 4 figures to be even less crowded. But to make this exercise worthwhile for voters trying to choose a candidate, someone in this field has to somehow catch Donald Trump, or at least come close. And tonight, the frontrunner was not spared from criticism.
And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing.
I can tell you that I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president now.
Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country, and it needs to be said plainly.
Now, the other big topic discussed tonight was the Israel-Hamas war, and of course for very good reason. Much of the country is so focused on that right now. The last debate was before Hamas attacked Israel, before more than 1,400 Israelis were killed, and before the siege of Gaza as well. The candidates on stage here displayed some of the toughest talk yet, doubling down on support for Israel at all costs. Take a listen.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them. And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations. And we have to remember that they have to, 1, eliminate Hamas, 2, support Israel with whatever they need whenever they need it, and 3, make sure we bring our hostages home.
One other interesting topic tonight related to that was some pretty fierce saber rattling when it comes to Iran. As we know, Iran supports both Hezbollah in Lebanon as well as Hamas. Iran has not been linked directly to this war, but there was very tough talk on showing force against Iran if necessary. Now, again, our team coverage continues with Ari Height. He's at the Arsht Center right now in the spin room where candidates take victory laps or sometimes do a bit of cleanup. Ari?
Yeah, Todd, like you mentioned, the spin room here is usually an opportunity for the candidates to come out and talk about all the things that they did right during the debate. But during this particular spin room, which as you can see right now, still plenty of reporters, a lot of media still here. During this one, only one candidate actually came out and took questions from reporters. Governor Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, they both did interviews with the host of the debate, but then they left. Tim Scott took a couple of questions from some reporters, and quite frankly, we never saw Chris Christie at all. Only Vivek Ramaswamy came down and took a ton of questions from reporters. And just like on the debate stage, he continued his attacks. He attacked the media. He attacked Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, continuing his thoughts that he believes that Joe Biden is not the current president and will not be the candidate for the Democratic Party in the next election. And he also continued his attacks on his opponents in the primary, in the Republican primary, specifically Nikki Haley.
When you have people who benefit from war, benefit from their relationships of the companies whose backs they've scratched, like Boeing while governor, then to join the board. This is the kind of behavior that we need to ban, the corruption that needs to end in our system.
And again, the other four candidates who were on the debate stage tonight, they did not come down, except for Tim Scott, who took a couple of questions. The other ones, though, chose not to offer any comments about the debate at all. That is the very latest from the Spin Room in Miami. Ari Height, WPBF 25 News.
Ari, thank you. And we should add that Nikki Haley did talk about Vivek Ramaswamy in the Spin Room as well. Specifically said he is not a serious candidate and is not to be taken seriously in this primary race. Tonight, as we mentioned, the former president is in town or nearby, a very short drive away in Hialeah, to make sure we mentioned the frontrunner's name tonight, Donald Trump. Terry Parker's live where that rally has wrapped up. Terry?
Right, Todd. It wrapped up about an hour ago, and then there was a Spin Room, and that's all over now, too. But this was an enthusiastic crowd that greeted former President Donald Trump here in Hialeah, and he spoke to this crowd mostly about what he would do if he were reelected. Donald Trump took the stage late, about 8:15, and the crowd was glad to see him finally. Trump criticizing President Biden on the economy, the border, and foreign affairs. He spoke about what he accomplished while president, and then he took aim at his Republican competitors, speaking at the nearby Republican debate, calling them weak and unwatchable.
Nobody's going to vote for. I watched these guys coming in. I had this thing, and I was watching these guys. They're not watchable. You know, the last debate was the lowest rated debate in the history of politics. So therefore, do you think we did the right thing by not participating?
Trump also spoke about what he insists was the stolen election and said the world was a much better place when he was president, and said there would have been no Russian invasion into Ukraine or a war with Israel if he were still in office. Now, Donald Trump did speak for about 90 minutes. I will say that his energy level was not as high as we've seen it sometimes before, but then again, he's fresh off of testifying in that civil fraud trial in New York. The crowd did cheer many times he was here. According to the Hispanic vote, Hialeah is 95% Hispanic in their registered voters. Live in Hialeah, Terry Parker, WPBF 25 News.
Terry, thank you so much for that. We'll mention here that the first debate had some 12 million viewers, the last debate 10 million. It'll be interesting to see how many Americans watch debate number 3 for the GOP primary tonight. Our coverage does not stop here. In about 10 minutes, I'll be joined by our exclusive WPBF 25 political analysts. They'll talk about the candidate performances and the issues that stood out. Again, it's just moments away for now. I'm Todd McDermott live in downtown Miami. Let's go back to Felicia in the studio. I'll see you in a bit.
All right, Todd, thank you.